Hey guys, welcome back. So on today's video, I wanted to talk about the financial cost of miscarriage. So I talked about the emotional cost and I kind of talked about the mental cost of miscarriage kind of in one video. But most people don't talk about the financial cost of miscarriage. And it seems like a weird thing to talk about, right? Money and miscarriage and how does money relate to miscarriage? But truthfully, unless you have fantastic insurance, you have to pay for miscarriages in a very tangible and real way. So in my case, I'm doing fertility treatment, so I have to pay for everything that I do. So I have to pay for the IUI, I have to pay for the sperm, I have to pay for everything. And so when you have a miscarriage, kind of the common sense is that money has now been spent and you have nothing for it. Sorry, I'm walking through my neighborhood. And you have nothing for it, And so that's kind of the first. And that's a lot of money. I'm lucky that for me, I have health insurance that actually paid for about half of my my treatment. So that still means I still have to pay for the other half. And so that's still the loss of what comes to about a couple $1,000s with every miscarriage. And so you figure I've lost 2, so that's more than a couple $1,000s. And I am a single mom. I do have a job that comfortably allows me to be a single mom and kind of have that. So that is something I'm very lucky to have and very blessed to have. But at the same time, that's still a lot of money to kind of spend and then not have anything for at the end of it. And that kind of feeds into a lot of emotional and mental stuff too, because you feel like you're giving a lot and not getting a lot in return. It's one of those things where you're kind of taking a chance and gambling really on this. IUIs, IVF don't have the greatest actually success rate. Most people don't realize it's really only about 20 to 30% success rate. So the fact that I've been able to get pregnant twice is actually really awesome. But it is something you have to think about when you're going through fertility treatment. Is this something that is fiscally responsible and smart for your family? Because that money can easily go somewhere else. It could go to trips, it could go to remodeling my house, it could go to many other things than trying to have a baby. Now, I don't regret spending the money. That's not what this is about, but it is something that does play into your head, especially with miscarriage. And I'm lucky. There's a lot of people who do not have health insurance, or health insurance does not cover fertility treatment, which means that they don't have the support financially in any way beyond what they themselves raise and whatever capital they can put in themselves. The fact that I'm able to at least have some of it covered is a great thing. And the other thing with miscarriage even with health insurance, which I have, miscarriage itself, like the physical miscarriage itself, especially in the US, is often not covered, at least not completely. In my case, I didn't have a miscarriage that was pretty and clean and easy the first time. You know, not that miscarriage is ever easy or ever clean, but when it goes through the biological process, it's a familiar process for most women. The way it ends and the way it feels, particularly when you are like me and you lose quite early in your pregnancy. And so that is, it's an easier process. However, my first one wasn't easy. My first one was actually really hard. To rehash again, my first miscarriage, we found out I was miscarrying because my hormones had gone down. My numbers weren't doubling, and so we knew I was going to probably miscarry. And so what happened from there is, hopefully naturally, my body was supposed to resolve itself. And it basically feels like very heavy period, and your body naturally resolves it. Well, in my case, my body wasn't naturally resolving it, and I had what's called a missed miscarriage or a missed abortion, because the medical term for miscarriage is actually abortion. So I still had retained part of the pregnancy still within my body, and you can't do that. That actually can end up becoming cancer cells. It can end up hemorrhaging and causing bleeding. It's a really dangerous situation to actually continue to have a miscarriage. And I didn't have an ectopic pregnancy. The cells were in my uterus where they're supposed to be. So I didn't have an ectopic or anything. We just could tell when I went in for my ultrasound after we confirmed the miscarriage that there was still blood flow to that, and that meant that the whole of the miscarriage hadn't completely resolved itself. So I had to have an MVA, a manual vacuum aspiration, which is an abortion procedure. Again, I want to emphasize I did not have an abortion. Had already miscarried. There was no heartbeat. It was just basically the remnants of what was the pregnancy. But it is a procedure that is done with miscarriage and with abortion, where they manually, with a silent vacuum, take out the lining of your uterus, thus taking with it those cells and kind of making sure that nothing is growing. I'd pay for that. And that was a couple $100. And so here you are going through a wanted pregnancy, going through an abortion procedure, and you have to pay for it. And that's a really kind of cutting thing to have to go through. Because it feels like pain being heaped upon pain. So now I have this emotional pain, which is I've miscarried, a very wanted child. You have the emotional pain, and you have the physical pain of the MVA, because it is actually, basically taking things out of your womb forcibly, which is very painful. And you have the financial pain. I have to pay for this. I have to pay to have this awful thing done to me. And I have to pay to go through it. And the same thing happens for women and families who have to have D&Cs, who obviously have to have abortions, who have to have this pregnancy terminated or ended, or the remnants of it taken. And it's something you have to pay for. It does feel like an indignity. It does feel very lonely and very striking, because it is a trauma upon trauma in different types of trauma. So that's something to be thinking about whenever you hear somebody talking about a miscarriage or a miscarriage, or having to have a procedure to get rid of a pregnancy that's already gone. So again, I'm not saying that you should advocate for any type of moral issue that you disagree with. But I am going to say that you need to have compassion for people who are going through it, because they're going through it on more than just a physical level and more than just an emotional level. And it's an unseen cost that people don't talk about. They don't talk about the fact that miscarriage costs you more than just your peace of mind, more than just physical pain. And that's really off-putting, to have to pay for those types of things when it's not your fault and you're already going through such pain. So that is one of the things when you're debating things like universal health care or women's reproductive health care. That's something to think about. It's something that I thought about a lot in the last couple months, is should people be paying for this? Now, your argument could easily be, well, if you have universal health care, the taxpayers are paying for it, so someone's got to pay for it. And I understand that. But it's just something to think about, I think. And it's an aspect of miscarriage that it's just not focused on. Mostly because we don't like to talk about money, and that's fair too. But for me, it was an aspect of my miscarriage that definitely felt very indignant because it felt like it was something that should have been covered. It feels like it's something that should have been covered, at least. That people shouldn't have to pay for their own miscarriages. But it's a fact of life, and it's a fact of our current healthcare system. So I hope it helps somebody. I don't know. It's something that I have thought about a lot in the last 3 to 4 months since my first miscarriage. And it's something that having 2 miscarriages and about to have a 3rd IUI, or a 4th IUI actually, you think about. At this point, I have spent quite a good deal of money to try to have this baby that I want very badly. And again, people can say, well, those are your financial choices, and you're absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. I'm willing to put my financial means on the line, and I'm able to, number one, and willing to spend this money to achieve this dream that I want. But I absolutely can see at the same time that money could be spent doing other things. And it's always an ironic thing where we'll always say, well, if you weren't spending that, you know, then you wouldn't be wasting. But at the same time, we wouldn't probably be saying that if I was already pregnant. You know, if I got pregnant in April when I had my very first IUI that did not result in a pregnancy at all, that would have been an acceptable cost. That would have been a couple $1,000. Hey, you have a baby, great. Now that we are, you know, going into the fourth time, and possibly talking about going into IVF, because I have IUIs. I haven't even spent in my 3 rounds of IUI, that's even my 4th. I haven't spent what I would spend in 1 round of IVF, which is another aspect of, you know, this is, people often, you know, they do IVF, and so they actually get these embryos implanted, and usually 1 or more. And a lot of times they lose both, or however many they put in, if they put 1 or multiples in. And imagine that, you know, the financial cost of you done this 1 round, and now it's all gone. You've spent it all on, and you don't have anything in return. You still have empty arms. So that is the financial cost of miscarriage. There is a cost. I have yet to hear of somebody that was completely covered and didn't have any kind of financial repercussions while trying to get pregnant. Obviously, when you're getting pregnant naturally, there's a little bit different too. You know, maybe there is more coverage, depending, because you obviously didn't have to pay to get pregnant. But the financial cost of might be covered in your insurance plan, and if that's what your insurance is, that's awesome. But I have found that is very rare. That, you know, and it's like everything else, it's deductibles and coverages and limits and all that. So I thank you all for sticking around and listening to me talk about this. And if you guys have any questions or want to talk about it or reach out, you can always reach out in the comment or privately through my social media, and I'm happy to talk about it and happy to discuss what it's like, because I'm just one woman who's had to go through this. There are many, many people who go through this every day. We are in October, which is Infant and Pregnancy Loss Month, which is a month that does honor people who have gone through miscarriage and who have gone through the pain of pregnancy loss and infant loss. And so I'm thinking about everybody who I know has gone through it, whether they've acknowledged it privately or publicly. And yeah, I just hope that this helps someone. And yeah, so thank you for sticking around, and God bless, and take care.